proceed? Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning. We are here because of Bryan Pata, the kid who was living out his childhood dream in 2006. He was a University of Miami football player, an NFL prospect, a larger-than-life college athlete. He was a son, he was a brother, he was a friend. We are not here because of his life, we are here because of his murder. On the evening of November 7th, 2006, Bryan Pata had just returned to his apartment from football practice. He parked his car in the parking lot, locked it, and began to walk towards his apartment. After only walking a few feet, the defendant approaches him and shoots him in the head. Bryan's body lay lifeless on the ground. He was discovered by his girlfriend and his roommate, who called 911. Police arrived. What ensued at that point is an investigation into one of the most popular football players at one of the most popular teams in the city of Miami. Because of the media impact of this murder, detectives are given a multitude of leads that they have to investigate, track down, and vet. But, members of the jury, you will hear that regardless of where this investigation took detectives, it kept coming back to one person, Rashaun Jones. Let's go back to earlier in the day on November 7th. By midday, Tony Hernandez, who was the compliance officer at University of Miami at the time, will tell you that he notified Rashaun Jones about his suspension from the football team. This was his second suspension for a failed drug test. Rashaun receives a letter that confirms his suspension, that copies the coaches on that. One more suspension, and he's facing the loss of his scholarship, playing time, which he wasn't getting too much by that point anyways. His dreams, essentially, of playing major college football begin to dwindle. And in the midst of all this, Bryan's star is on the rise. He has the girl, he's got the talent, and he's got the popularity. Jones begins to unravel. By 3 p.m., he doesn't go to practice. Instead, he changes his cell phone number. Calls his girlfriend at the time, Sherry Abramson. She's paying for his phone and has her help him change his number, which you will see on his phone records. By 4 o'clock, he's got a new number, and the only people that have it are very few. One of them is his friend, Bruce Johnson, and the other is Sherry Abramson. 6 p.m. happens. The defendant knows that practice is over. He gets a call from Bruce, who would have been at practice. That's on the phone records. Dwayne Hendricks, who's the roommate of Bryan, will tell you, by the time practice ended, he and Bryan left roughly around the same time. Bryan takes some freshmen home on the way to his apartment. Dwayne stops for gas. Fed know who you were here from. It's Bryan's brother. On November 7th, right around the time that he was murdered, they're on the phone talking about life, talking about cars. I'll tell you they're catching up. He knew that Bryan got home that night, but he never heard his voice again. 6:35 p.m. Paul Connor, a professor at the University of Miami, who lived at the same apartment complex as Bryan, that day happens to take the metro to UM. He picks up the metro at Dayland Station, takes all the way to UM, takes it back after class. He will testify that he remembers checking his watch, and it was 6:35 p.m., and it took him about 20 minutes to walk the mile to his apartment. As he approaches the apartment complex, he hears what he describes as a bang or a pop. He immediately looks up thereafter and sees the defendant exiting the apartment complex on foot. He gets a good look at his face. He even turns back and sees the defendant hurrying away, still on foot. As he walks through the apartment complex, he sees Bryan's car, which you will see in a photo is parked sort of right in the front, with its taillights on. But he doesn't see Bryan, who's lying lifeless on the ground behind the bushes. He continues to walk onto his apartment, which is on the other side of the complex. Around 7:06, 911 call goes out. Police arrive on scene. Bryan's body is there. Still has his wallet on him with cash. His luxury SUV is still in the parking lot. The keys are with Bryan. This is personal. An area canvass begins. Detectives begin working. Word immediately begins to spread. Media floods the crime scene. Family members flood the crime scene. Teammates, some coaches. By 7:10, 7:30, right, it starts to spread a little bit more through the players and the coaches. They start to get notified. An all-team mandatory meeting is called. Coach Navarro, who's a member of the coaching staff today at UM and who was a member of the coaching staff back then, will tell you that the coaches found out about Bryan's murder during a coaches meeting. When that somebody walks into the meeting and lets them know, when that happens, Coach Coker picks up the phone and calls Chief Hudak, City of Miami Coral Gables. Chief Hudak, who was a former UM football player himself, he's been working with the University of Miami as a security advisor as well as a mentor to the players, speaks with Coach Coker and says, we got to have a meeting right now. All the players need to get to the Heck Center right now. Bring everybody in. The goal at that point was to first check on everybody mentally and physically. Excuse me. Coach Navarro will tell you that the way that they began to notify all the players was sort of through this phone tree. The coaches would sort of call out to the players, and the players would sort of reach out to the other players. Everybody's got to get to the Heck Center. Right now, we're having a meeting. Around 7:30 p.m., Bruce Johnson, the defendant's friend, calls him. It's on the phone records. Hey, you have to come down to the Heck Center. There's a mandatory meeting. Defendant says, okay, all right. By 10:20 p.m., most of the players have already made their way down to the Heck Center where the meeting is at. Rashaun Jones still hasn't shown up. The defendant calls Mike Sanders. Mike Sanders at the time was a baseball player. He was roommates with a football player. Mike's family had money. That was a fact that was sort of known. The defendant called him and says, hey, Mike, I need money. But wouldn't tell him why. Hangs up the phone. Mike is so weirded out by that call that he books it to the Heck Center to tell Coach Coker. By the time he gets there, Rashaun Jones is still not at the meeting. Team meeting goes late into the night. By the time it ends, the only person, the only teammate who does not show up to the meeting, aside from Bryan, who's dead, is Rashaun Jones. The following day, Paul Connor, who watches the news, realizes the significance of what he saw that night and contacts the Miami-Dade Police Department. They meet with him. They eventually give him a lineup, and he identifies the defendant as the person that he saw leaving the apartment complex that night. Now, you're going to hear that Paul Connor's testimony was perpetuated previously. That just means that a witness gave testimony in a courtroom under oath with lawyers who asked questions. Because there was a concern at some point that witness might not be available in the future, even though that witness isn't here today, the law allows you, members of the jury, to hear his testimony, and you should consider it the same as you consider any other testimony that you hear throughout the trial in this case. So, the story of Bryan and Rashaun begins well before Rashaun pulls the trigger. It goes back to when he first joined the team as a freshman in 2004. Therefore, in order to understand how we got to November 7th, 2006, we have to travel back in time to fall of 2004. The backdrop, as we kind of talked about a little bit already, is the University of Miami. Between at least 2004 and 2006, it was at its peak. Players on the football team were the best of their high school. People were going to UM with dreams to make it to the NFL. The first sort of catalyst where the seed of resentment really gets planted happens in August of 2004. There was a fight in a dorm room. You will hear from Eric Moncourt and Dave Howell, who will tell you that the defendant was caught by Bryan, Dave, and Eric in Eric's dorm room. While he's caught in there, words start to get exchanged. There's sort of a verbal dispute between Bryan and Rashaun, and then that verbal dispute turns physical. He gets headbutted by Bryan, beat up essentially. Rashaun is so upset that he tells Bryan, better clip up. Dave will tell you what that means. That first fight may have ended there, but that embarrassment that Rashaun felt lingered. Dave will also tell you that he saw a small revolver-type gun in the defendant's hands later that fall. You will also hear from Kareem Brown, another player, who knew that the defendant had a .38 because he bragged about it. George Hertel, who's a Miami-Dade firearms expert, will tell you the projectile removed from Bryan's head was a .38 jacketed lead hollow point bullet. That was a fact that wasn't publicly released until after the defendant's arrest in 2021. Now, that seed of resentment starts to grow. You will hear about Jada Brody, who was Bryan's girlfriend at the time. They met in 2005. They were living together up until Bryan's murder in 2006. Players will tell you all about their relationship, how they loved each other. It was just their one-year anniversary that they were celebrating. You will also hear that Jada and Rashaun, before she had met Bryan, had a fling. He wanted her, she wanted Bryan. Football. Bryan, by 2006, was an NFL prospect, third-round draft pick. His focus was on the NFL. He was one of those guys who was going to make it, being scouted by several organizations in the NFL by that point. Rashaun, on the other hand, was facing his second suspension. He was not really playing too much, unknown. He could not get out of his own way. You will hear in the end, Jones was never really a fan of Bryan. They weren't friends. What had started as early competition hardened over time. Jones was resentful of Bryan. That grew into envy. Jones never had his name called with the same excitement over fans, the same excitement from Jada, or the same excitement from the NFL or any of the coaches really at UM. Even though Rashaun was the one who broke the rules that led to his suspension, if he couldn't have it, Bryan couldn't have anything either. The state only has to prove two things to you: that a crime was committed and that the defendant committed that crime. As you heard in voir dire, the murder happened in 2006 and the defendant was arrested in 2021. There is no statute of limitations for murder. That is why homicides continue to be investigated over the passage of time, because the facts don't change. Therefore, the passage of time is not a defense. As you heard and you will hear throughout this trial, this is a circumstantial evidence case. All that means is that it's a case that is proven on facts based on other proven facts and the logical and reasonable conclusions that you members of the jury can draw from them. We are not asking you to speculate. This is not guesswork. The evidence in this case only requires you members of the jury to use your common sense. As you sit through this trial, we are asking that you just pay close attention to each and every witness who testifies, because each person will provide a piece of evidence that in the end points only to one person, the man sitting at that table over there, Rashaun Jones. Rashaun Jones's actions paved a path through his behaviors, his timings, his communications, his actions, and it is the context of those combined circumstances that would allow you members of the jury, at the conclusion of the state's case, to find the defendant guilty of second-degree murder.